welcome back to my channel. Camille DeVille here. Thanks for tuning in. Today we are going to cover Adam Walsh. You've probably heard of him. I have. I grew up watching America's Most Wanted, which his dad created and is the host of. He's done a ton of stuff for child advocacy and finding missing children, as well as finding the bad guys. So, with no further ado, let's get into it. In Hollywood, Florida, on July 27, 1981, 6-year-old Adam Walsh would be abducted from a Sears shopping center. Sounds like outside of said Sears shopping center. He went out with his mother. She wanted to buy a lamp, and back in 81, it's like whatever. July 27th, 1981, it's whatever. At that point, kids didn't just pop up and missing by abduction. I mean, they probably did, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So it was not abnormal for a parent to be like, okay, I'm gonna go over here, and the kid would be like, I'm gonna chill in the toy section, which is what happened. Adam wanted to go join these other kids, a bit older than him, but these other kids at the video game toy section. And that would be the last time his mom sees him. She goes over to the home department, and next thing you know, when she comes back about 10 minutes or so later, there's no kids, there's no Adam. So she talks to a store manager or somebody in authority there and is like, hey, I'm looking for my son, ... And they put out a intercom alert like, Adam, your mom's looking for you, meet her here kind of thing. And he never shows. Now, as this is going on, and you're hearing this over the intercom, it turns out then, and obviously we didn't have like cell phones and stuff at the time, his mother, Reve, Adam Walsh's mother, is in the store with him. Her mother-in-law, so Adam's grandmother, was actually there as well. They join in the effort to search for him. At some point shortly thereafter, they're able to talk to security, and 17-year-old security guard, makes them aware that like there was actually like a issue with the kids, right? They got into a little spiff, argument, fight of some nature, and the other kids were a little bit older, so she's like, hey, you guys gotta go. Their parents were there, whatever. And it's differing, but they were let out for sure out of some exit of Sears. One story will tell you they sent the two boys that were already previously together out one exit. Another one, she would have escorted the other two, including Adam, to another exit. Either way, these children were sent out of the department store, which is like the biggest, scariest, it seems based on what we know, that would be the demise. I'm not blaming her. She was doing her job. Probably someone else told her to do that. It was in her training. I don't know. But he was so little. He should have been like, okay, you teenager-ish boys go off, but little dude, let's get you back to mama, But Adam was shy, and I think based on everything I've learned that he would have just been like, oh, I'm in trouble too. And not that he had anything to do with the fight. There's no confirmation that he was part of this issue, but he probably was just like, shoot, I'm in trouble. I'm just gonna do what this lady says. And I think I've always been like a baddie, even when I was a kid, but I might have been like, well, I want to find my mom, but I also might have just been like, okay, fine, put me out here. I'll go outside and then I'll find her later. But I don't know. So that's huge. Adam was escorted or asked to leave the Sears department building. Now, what happens from here is tragic. Multiple reports. Well, I guess let's go back to mom is still searching. Grandma's still searching. Now you have Sears searching. And they start looking through the entire Sears clothing racks. Like I've mentioned before, these dang kids just go and do some wild little things. Fitting rooms. And then end up searching the whole mall. Within 2 hours, they would bring the police in, call them, like, missing child, this is what's going on. The police department was directly across the street, and remains that way, from what was once that Sears. So police get involved. Also, John Walsh, Adam Walsh's father, gets involved. He is called and he starts looking. They're looking up and down this mall. And then expand the search to parking lot and nearby areas. Nothing. Again, at this time, things were so different. So the mom's like, maybe, they weren't even really thinking abduction, I guess. They were more on the mindset of like, more than likely, because he was let out, he was trying to find his way, whatever. So she left her car there allegedly with notes. Adam, if you see this, stay here. Do not leave. In their initial and very often media interviews, the parents would plead with him like, Adam, this is some landmarks, stay there. It's a safe space. Do this. They had all this hope for him to come home. However, a week goes by, and a week with a 6-year-old just kind of doing his own thing, being lost that long, suspicion and worse thoughts started coming to their heads. And that is when the FBI would be called to be involved with the police investigation. Now, people do critique the fact the FBI wasn't involved from the beginning, but that's just, let's stay the story here for now. It did take them about a week to get the FBI involved and treat this like not only a missing child's case, but a missing endangered child, like with somebody bad kind of thing. Unfortunately, only about 2 weeks later, fishermen would be around a riverbank area, not too far. And one of them, or both of them, noticed as they were looking at a fishing spot that one of them apparently really liked, that there was a human skull. And they called police. And then police arrive, call for backup. That skull will be taken in for autopsy the next day. Adam Walsh was all over the news. This was, again, at the time, not something that happened, really. So, autopsy initial exam shows that he was decapitated with 5 to 6 blunt force chopping motions, if you will, by probably a machete or something similar. There's another word, but I forget how to say it, and I've never heard of it. Anyway, something like that. It would be determined that he would have been face down and most likely postpartum is pregnancy. Postpartum. So he was already dead when his head was severed. Whew. They also called in a family friend, as well as brought in dental records. Like I was saying, they were thinking about Adam Walsh at this time, and they could tell it was a young child's skull. And it was a match. So shortly thereafter, they would hold a funeral for Adam. The body was not found, and actually to this day has never been found. But they hold the funeral, and just, days, if a week later, the family started from their garage an outreach program to continue to try to solve Adam's case, as well as help other people. The first of many amazing things they would do to help missing and exploited children. Did you know that only 1% of children are returned to their families that go missing? That is, I can't take it, okay? I can't take that information. As with any missing child, the first initial suspects are going to be people that knew them. So they investigate the parents, family. Also, there was a man named James Campbell living with them and had been living with them for a few years. All of them passed their lie detector test, some of them multiple lie detector tests. Mom was lie detector tested like 2 months after his disappearance. John Walsh, the father, was done pretty quickly. I even want to say like a week, 2, somewhere very close to the time that he disappeared. And they showed no deception. James Campbell, that roommate I just spoke of, had moved out only a week prior, and they did 2 lie detector tests on him and hypnosis, which I guess used to be used. All of that is really, again, I think not verifiable in court. I was watching a really cool investigator dude, and he's like, even lie detectors, he'll sit there with somebody he knows is guilty and they can pass as innocent. He'll sit there with someone he knows is innocent and they don't pass lie detector and they would seem guilty. Either way, James did pass all of that. Now, in his interviews, he allegedly, from what I've heard, says he had an affair, a relationship with the mother of Adam. She denies it. When she was questioned, she denies it, and I don't think that's ever been confirmed. So for a quick second during my investigation, I was like, well, affair, move out, tension, do Reve, R-E-V-E, and James have something to do with it? But really, ultimately, after all the police's searching and questioning and the way that she looked so adamantly and aggressively with her husband John for Adam and to get justice, I personally have ruled that out. Anything's possible, and we're going to go over a lot of different theories here in this video. But something worth mentioning, and I'm sure there's a handful of people that believe that theory. That wasn't one I could really find, but I researched enough shiz that I was like, maybe. I digress. Let's move on. In November of the same year that Adam went missing and was found, his head was found, so obviously dead, an inmate named Edward James had started confessing and bragging to his cellmate that he killed and did all these things to Adam. So that was their first real suspect, I suppose. They look into it more and nothing was founded. There are so many different suspects and crazy rabbit holes, if you will, that the police had to go down. Hence, they had to check into tips, suspects, people falsely claiming to have been the one that did this, and then just a freaking giant waste of time. So frustrating. Why do people do that? They want the celeb status for killing somebody. Okay, so anyway, that brings us to a man named Otis or Otis, or however you want to pronounce it, Toole, Otis Toole. And he was an inmate at the time that he decided to start confessing. Him and his partner, Henry Lee Lucas, had done a freak ton of crimes together, and both ultimately were convicted of murders. Harry had confessed to 600 something murders. Otis had confessed to 125 something murders. Convicted, Harry was 9, Otis was 6. I mean, they're both freaking disturbed, and they both actually, what can I say? I know Otis had a 6th grade education level. Don't know about the other guy, but they both don't act. I just spit. I can't stand when I do that. But anyway, they both actually had, what do you call it? They weren't all there. Mentally challenged, almost. They appear that way, but that's also speculated, and don't mark my words for that. But Otis for sure, just not educated. I don't know if he couldn't be or he decided not to be, but some of this case could either be the confusion because of that, or it could be the confusion because he didn't do it. They were actually both known as the confession killers, confessing to all these murders, and a lot of them, the majority of them would be found that they did not do. They didn't do them. So that's my first big red freaking flag. You can't take this to heart. There were a handful of these people saying, I did it, and there was no evidence. And then Otis says he did it, and we're going to take that. Well, they did look into it, though. Obviously, they want to bring peace to the family, justice, solve it, what have you. This begins a very long process with Otis. I could go into every detail but I don't think I'm going to. One, because it's too dang confusing, but I'm going to give you the brief kind of synopsis of his confessions. And when I say confessions, I mean plural, regarding singular Adam. He confesses. He happened to confess the day after the family put out a film. It was the first film ever to come up with a 1-800 number at the end and show missing children's pictures and stuff, but it had to do with Adam. You can find it, but from what I hear, only on DVD or VHS. I have not been able to see it. There's a second one that's available, I believe, on Amazon. Something about Adam, his song continues. And that goes more into what the parents have been able to do and bring good from such a terrible tragedy. But Otis was in prison at the time that Adam came out. It did, according to other inmates, pop up on the TV, but not enough for anyone to really gather any information. They turned that back to football, what have you, and then the next day, Otis wants to confess to being involved and murdering Adam. That's a little weird to me. You waited all that time until the day after. Okay. And you have this history of admitting to stuff you didn't do. Well, that happens. And they go ahead and search into that and question him. Back to the confesses. Yes, multiple times, like I freaking said. He confesses and then he recants. He confesses, he recants. He confesses, gives basic information, like just enough that the police are like, it's worth still digging into. I think one of the initial things is he did say something about the 5 to 6 blows to the back of the head, or 2, yeah, I think he did say the back of the head, but either way, he said just enough to make himself look like he could be the guy, and then he would completely go off track, like be right about a couple of things, and then completely off track. And then, like I said, be like, oh, I actually didn't do it. His first initial confession, he tried to pin on Harry, the guy that he did murders with and all that junk that I referred to earlier, one of the other confession killers. So when things weren't adding up, because that dude was actually incarcerated in a different area completely and he could not have been there during that time, Otis is like, well, yeah, it was just me, actually. It was just me. He wasn't there. I was trying to get back at him because he started dating my niece. Now, they were a couple. They were lovers, these two. Not the niece. The Harry and Otis. Okay. And Otis got super hurt by this whole thing. And so he's like, this was like my revenge on him. I wanted to pin this on him. But you're right. He wasn't there. I did it alone. Okay, so keep going with the story. Camille, keep going with the story, and then we tell our thoughts at the end later on. We tried to. So, yeah, story changes pretty drastically, because now he's acting alone. He had changed why he lured or how he lured him in. One story, a very popular one, being he lured him with toys and candy into his Cadillac. Reports from the day or something about like a suspicious blue van. I'm getting off track here. Anyway, I literally lost count of the times that Otis said, I did do it, and then I didn't do it. I lost track of this is what he said, this is what he took back. He originally did say that, on the second confession, he did say that I actually had no motive for taking him other than I wanted a child to raise as my own. And that has happened. People have kidnapped and tried to raise children as their own. More times than not, it is for actual gratification and other demonic, perverted reasons. I believe that's what happened in this case. I don't buy this raise my child on my own thing. But that was one story he told. But Adam was like, trusting it first, according to him. Then he's in the damn car and he starts getting tripped out and he starts like acting bad. And Otis is like, so then I started punching him, woo woo woo. And that leads to me deciding to kill him in this off the road, dirt road, brushy area. At the time, it didn't have like guardrails and stuff, so it would have been easy to get into and not be seen. And he says that he buried the remains there, and then and I want to say he is the one that said that he R-worded him for 2 hours. I don't know if he was alive or not at that point. People have done both. I'm gonna hope he wasn't alive at that point, but I couldn't find that. Anyhow, then he drives another 10 minutes after he has decapitated the child, and then there's like he's drove around for days with the head in his car and he just forgot about it. I don't know. Either way, 10 minutes from the area where he claims that he beat him and all this stuff happened, he took the head though, after burying the remains over there, and threw it down this historical spot where the skull was found. The problem is though, during investigation, the police made a lot of mistakes, and they have admitted to that. Not limited to, but including that they had shown him pictures. Okay, so in one of their, not the first, but one of their initial kind of times with Otis, they drove him to 2 separate seers. Is this the one? Is this the one? And the first one was the fake one. And he's like, no, definitely not this one. It was like a 1-story mall. They take him to the second one. And he's like, I can't be absolute sure, but yeah, I think this is the one. Then he had mentioned a turnpike in the road, one like leading to maybe mobile homes or something, one leading to just a woodsy area. And so that part was accurate, but he could not bring them to this place. He tried, of where Adam was actually hurt, and they excavated and searched that whole area, and nothing was found. And yeah, back to what I was saying about how the skull placement, it's like the police made so many, and there's more, but so many F-ups, being not used to doing these kind of things. They've apologized for it. As of this time, the Walsh family and the police department are cool and in agreement that Otis Toole was responsible for this. But anyway, he was able to point out, like, yeah, that's where I dropped the head. But he had already seen pictures. And in investigations, as they're trying to solidify this story and put Otis there at the time of this crime, they, I guess, accidentally told him too much. So what could have been very believable, substantial evidence, solid stuff to put him behind bars for that. Now, he's already behind bars, like I said. But to convict him, charge him of this, kind of all fell to crap because he was given too much information. You don't know, what does he know just by what he's been told? And what does he know because he was actually there? And how many freaking times did he not know? It was like kinda, sorta, again, some things right, majority wrong. Take you to this place, don't really remember. Ooh, those investigators were so stinking frustrated. I'm frustrated now. But yeah, he might have just toyed with them, or maybe he did, and because of his mental, what do we want to call it, capabilities, and that he said at one point, I was so drunk, like, it's hard for me to remember. People do black out. People do forget things. So, I don't know. I think it's important that you do know that the Walsh family and the Hollywood, Florida police did determine that with no new evidence, that there was enough evidence all along, and they were going to close this case, and it would be Otis Toole as the killer, who died in prison. I want to say he had some liver issues, and he died in prison in 94, something like that. In one of Toole's differing stories, he would say he assaulted and buried the body at that one spot. Later, he's like, oh yeah, it wasn't there. You know, I actually went up to my mom's property, a home that he had already burned down. He had been in prison or jail for arson already, but he had already burned down her home. So it was like just like an empty shell of a house kind of situation. And that's actually where I took the rest of the body and tried to dispose of the remains. And says that he put the remains in a ice chest type situation, tried to burn them, it kept going out. Frustrated, he throws the remains and all that back, like into the trunk of his car, douses it with water, and then takes it to a landfill. Police try to follow up with the landfill. Records aren't kept super great. Literally, you go in and you go out, and all that they're doing really is weighing what the amount difference is so they can charge you for whatever you've disposed of. By the time this all comes out and that it would be relevant to start searching, it would have been 60 feet at least of dumping. So it was not feasible to go and search in there. And that freaking sucks. But like, I feel like if it was a dead ringer, like you knew, this is like, ooh, 99.999% the guy. Oh, they probably still want to do it, but I would hope so. But with all the missteps and misleading them, zigzagging them around this, anyway, they decided they couldn't do a search there for the rest of the remains. And they also couldn't really put Otis there, as his story says, to confirm that he actually did drop the body there or whatever. He also says that he cut out the lining of the trunk of the car. This car was not his. It was at one point, okay? He bought the car off this lady, a co-worker, something. She knew him somehow. He bought the car off her, was making payments, couldn't make them anymore. She takes it back. Then she keeps it at her company lot, and then she sells it to a car lot. And they had to question her, and she's like, yeah, there's absolutely lining, like carpet lining in the car. I used it multiple times to put my groceries in. He might have had an extra key, like he's saying. He might have had access to that car and was able to go in and use it, etc. Well, when the cops were able to locate the car, yes, the lining was out of the trunk of the car. I think that aids to say that Otis maybe did this. Do I think it's 100% sure? I don't. He could have done that, known that, and just used it as part of his story to make himself seem in his head cool for being the killer of one of the most famous, child nappings and killings of all time. Otis did say that he chopped, I hate these sentences, Adam's head off. Multiple blows with a machete, which was consistent with the autopsy. But the thing is, I don't know how much he knew from investigators or whatever he'd seen on TV at this point. But that was consistent with the autopsy and what was left of Adam that they did find. Not only that, probably to me the most telling evidence that it could be Otis was he described the murder weapon, the machete, as machete, and the wooden handle, black electrical tape wrapped around it, as to not blister his hand, and then a green canvas sheath, the thing you put it in. That would be found. Yes, it would be. Again, one of these people he had worked with, where what have you, had a company, and a machete was missing. It was not solidified that it was the same one because it was missing, and it could have just been misplaced. But yes, like there was one available to him, but also there's one available to me if I go down to the damn store, you know. Whether that description was exactly like that or not, I don't know. And maybe he added the tape and the holder thing, but it was found. I don't know if it was the same guy or another guy at his company's lot in another car. And he randomly found a machete, and the picture is going to come up here, and it did meet that description. Now, as much information as I've given you, not everyone believes Otis is responsible. I think with all the reasons I kind of just told you. There is a plethora of people that actually believe the infamous Jeffrey Dahmer is responsible. And at first I was like, But there is some things I want to go over of why those people are valid in considering him as a suspect. So let's go over those now. Rewind, one more thing. The Cadillac that they found with, that Otis said that he had the head in for days or what have you before he discarded of it. Okay, so upon initial search, and I forget what it's called, there's initial search to go through the car and see if there's any blood, any hair fibers, all that stuff. Nothing came up. Luminol is used at this point and in these situations, and it will be reactive to blood. It also can be reactive to other things like bleach and things of that nature. Now, back then, there was not the DNA testing and forensics that we have now. So, it did light up. On the driver's side, though, an impression or some blood. A lot of people believe that impression was of Adam's face. I think that's odd. If that is correct, it is on the driver's side. You're not sitting there with the head rolling around in between your legs. It's going to be on the passenger side. It's going to be in the back. Okay, so that's another thing that gives Otis's story a bit more validity because something was found. But again, it just can't 100% say that it was that. And another police F-up was that once DNA and forensics was evolved enough, they couldn't go back and test it because why? The police lost the freaking evidence. Misplaced it, lost it, destroyed it maybe even. I don't believe that was on purpose, but it is gone. And that was it. That was what they needed to totally, I mean, he was already gone, but totally pin him for this or not. And it's gone. It's gone. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with Jeffrey Dahmer. I haven't even done my own deepest dive on that quite yet. I actually really loved the documentary movie. I love Evan Peters. I think he did a great job at portraying what it sounds like Jeffrey Dahmer was like. But then, you know, after I watched the movie, did some more research, and it just kind of like, some of it was right, some of it was wrong, what have you. But it is, let's just go over Jeffrey's history a little bit, okay? Before Adam went missing and died, Jeffrey had already killed, which we did not know at that time, but had already killed about 3 to 4 years prior, took like a 9-year break, and then started killing again. There is speculation that he probably did in between. But fast forward to when he was arrested for murders, he admitted to not only the ones that they knew of, but actually gave the police even more that they would have never maybe otherwise been able to convict him of. And so when questioned, because he was interviewed early on and then again about Adam, he's like, if I did it, I would have told you, like I told you about everything else. It kind of, as freaking weird as it sounds, because he had to lie to do his crimes, feel that Jeffrey gives a honest, now honest kind of delivery and kind of person, not a good person, but an honest. I feel in my heart of hearts that he would have admitted to it. However, there are some red flags, suspicious activity, and things that could have put him in that place at that time. As well as Jeffrey even telling a detective, like, anyone who admits to killing Adam Walsh, a 6-year-old, and it's this, like, well-known, essentially, this is not verbatim, this is me clicking together what I remember from what he had said, will not be okay in prison. And Jeff had it good in prison. He had protection from the guards. He was kind of a celebrity of sorts because he's one of the most famous, infamous killers of our time, of all time. So it's kind of, yeah, and at first I feel like I just discredited Dahmer being brought up because I'm like, oh, it's like one of the biggest kidnappings of all time. It's one of the biggest child murders of all time. So it can't be the most famous, one of the most famous killers of all time, but it could be. And these are the reasons that people believe Dahmer could be the guy. So just days before Adam's disappearance, a mother reported a attempted abduction at a nearby Florida mall. not the same one, but a nearby one. And the sketch that the mother provided of this man did have similarities to Jeff Dahmer. The same day that Adam went missing from the mall, 2 people, either then or later, realized once they had seen Jeffrey's picture, or whether they called. See, that's the thing, is there's differing information depending on where you're looking, but I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't know exactly. But I do know 2 people saw what seemed to be Jeffrey Dahmer at the same mall that Adam went missing the same day. He could have been in that area. He didn't live far from there. He claims he had no transportation and had just started working at a sub shop. But there is ways to get around. There's also rumors that he would have had access to a blue van, which is something that was reported early on that could have been involved, which Otis did not. So maybe. And the other thing I think about is, Jeffrey didn't have like a straight up, this is the kind of person I go for. Basically, if you were a man and he was attracted to you, age didn't really matter. And from what we know, ages would have been like 13 to 52 that he had targeted and hurt and killed. But who's to say that he wasn't attracted to 6-year-old Adam? Maybe. Frick, man. And then the head thing, I don't know, that kind of, obviously we know about Jeffrey, that's the severed heads and keeping things. It's weird to me that he would have got rid of the head, but then it makes sense the body wasn't there because maybe he practiced cannibalism with that. So many years later, when Jeffrey's Dahmer picture comes up, his previous offenses that he had been in trouble for actually did include, from what I've concluded, indecent exposure to minors. So that does give credit to him being an absolute possibility. But yes, years later, at least one of those witnesses called into police and was like, that is the man that I saw that day that Adam went missing. That's a lot for me to take in and just say, no. I started my research with thinking, no, it wasn't him. But yeah, I believe that it is possible. And I'm not convinced that it was Otis Toole, and I'm not convinced that it was Jeffrey Dahmer, and I'm not convinced that it wasn't either of them. We'll get into that as I wrap up our video. So I guess lastly, I'm just gonna say my thoughts. Somewhere in my heart of my hearts, and no disrespect to the police, and especially to Adam's family, I do not believe, from my findings and intuition, I'm not psychic, okay? If I am, that's cool, but I don't believe I am, no. But just my general feeling, and with the information I see and the character of these 2 men, I don't believe either of them are responsible. I don't think Otis is. I think that the family believes it because there's enough for them to consider it. And I think it was like 28 years later when they finally, Otis was already gone, been dead. It was 2008, the press conference where John and his family were attended, and John spoke and accepted Otis as the killer. And it was a huge moment of relief. But as powerful and amazing as these people are and all they have done well, and we're just going to go with that and as well, done amazing for the world and children, I think you just get so desperate and exhausted not having an answer that any closure is better than none. It doesn't change what happened, but at least you can feel like the person responsible, you know the name, and he's no longer with us. They could be 100% right. I don't think so. I think this was emotionally driven. I think the police wanted to, emotionally driven, put an end to this for that family. But that's the information that I have regarding this case. Now, it is very important that we talk about what good came. Adam Walsh's life was not in vain for many reasons, but let's talk about the big and well-known ones. And if you don't know about them, you will now. Remember I said the family started an outreach program to help solve their own child's unsolved case? Yeah. So that turned into a bigger thing. The 1988 host of America's Most Wanted, John Walsh. The FBI has credited him for several individuals from their list being found. Not only that, but in the years that it was running, it seems like up to, I'm just going to ballpark it, okay? Between 1,000 and 2,000 of the people that he showed their crimes and were trying to find these effers, they found. Amazing. That is huge, you guys. How many lives were saved and justice was brought because of his damn show, because of the unimaginable tragedy that had happened to Adam. On July 27th of 2006, Adam Walsh Protection Safety Act comes into play. The purpose was to expand the National Sex Offender Registry to keep it updated and sent to relevant jurisdictions. A felony for people who are supposed to be on the list if they do not stay on the list or update their addresses and that kind of thing. Public access, you and I now can view that for our own safety. Also to help strengthen federal penalties for people that are convicted and charged of these terrible things. Sheds a light on the exploitation of children on the internet, a lot of things not limited, but including child porn. There's also a reason that they do background checks on foster parents, adopted parents, and people that work with kids now. And it all leads back to the Walsh's family's efforts to make sure their children of the world are safer. It's incredible. One of the most well-known would be the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Gosh, I'm having a hard time with that word. Maybe because I don't like it. It's a nonprofit organization bringing children home and offering even resources so that parents that go through this unimaginable kind of thing have a step-by-step process. This is what you should do. You have support. You have kind of a guideline of what to do for something you didn't prepare for. Oh, it's terrible. But yes, this is not terrible. What they've done is amazing. You can't say that Adam's disappearance and that happening to that family it meant something. It really meant something. And their thing I'm talking about right now, this National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has brought, at the time that it was last checked into of my research, 360,000 plus children home. So let's add like another 40,000 or something to that. Like, it is growing. It helped. It continues to help. That's incredible. It's incredible. For real. I'm so grateful. Growing up watching John Walsh, I did not know this stuff. My mom told me at some point, like, he started that because that. And I was like, oh. And then comes this past week where I researched the case and I find out as much as I can to share with you guys. So, thank you for joining me here. Thank you for everyone that did their part in their research and investigations on this case. Whew, I'm exhausted. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Please hit like, subscribe, ring notifications, comment your thoughts. Who do you think did it? Is it Otis? Was it Jeffrey? Is it some name I don't know? Was it that Edward James guy? Was it the James Campbell guy? Like, I just think it was some weirdo and he never got away with it. Or, sorry, did get away with it and probably is by now, hopefully. But yeah, that's all I have to share about that for today. Lock your doors and watch your babies. Literally watch your babies. Back in this day, things were different. Nowadays, you leave your little kid, even your teenager, all by them damn self, then I'm gonna judge the shiznit out of you, okay? Watch them. Watch them. Okay, back to it. Lock your doors, watch your babies, watch your families. Until next time, Camille DeVille out.